Welcome into another edition of Inside Cowboys Training Camp, driven by Ford, on site at the River Ridge Sports Complex in Oxnard, California, alongside former Dallas Cowboys draft pick Isaiah Stanback. I'm Kyle Youmans, and Isaiah, you were a quarterback at one point in time.
Yeah.
You had to deal with some pressure. Did you ever have to deal with as much pressure as what Dak Prescott and the offense had to deal with throughout padded practices this week?
Not at all. These guys are absolute beasts up front. I mean, you talk about this defensive line of Dan Quinn. This dude has pretty much 3, if not 4, starting defensive lines. There's going to be some really tough decisions to be made down the road. But in terms of Micah Parsons, the pressure that he's applying out of, you seeing Vander Esch walk to the end of the line of scrimmage. Osa Digizua getting in there. Then you got Big Mozzie Smith and Jonathan Hankins clogging things up. And not only clogging up things in the A-gap, but they're also getting penetration. But you're seeing Dak Prescott get out the pocket a lot on a lot of flushes, and he's going to have to learn how to run and throw on the ball, throw on the run.
And he's had to really deal with different types of pressure, the interior pressure, the outside pressure. This is a Dan Quinn defense that at least over the last 3 years has had pass rushers.
Yes.
Now you've got the combination. How beneficial is that for the Cowboys front seven to say, hey, we have that extra level to rely on?
This is what you want to see. I mean, he's not looking for these interior defensive linemen to add pressure, right, in the form of pass rush. But when you have that and you can get internal pressure, it is a quarterback's worst nightmare. So if they can not only clog up the A-gap and prevent the offensive line from being able to work up to the linebackers and have a rushing attack, but if they can get penetration internally, and then you have to still worry about Micah Parsons and D-Law and everybody else, Sam Williams, that they want to throw into the fold, that's going to cause offenses a lot of troubles.
How much pressure does that put on the offensive line?
Is extreme pressure. I don't know how you can exist as a quarterback in that type of offense. Offensive coordinators are going to have to really change up their schemes, not only in the rushing game, but especially in their passing attack.
You got to find a way to combat that rushing attack, because not only are you trying to go to the outside, but you're going to the inside, and you've got guys behind them like Leighton Vander Esch, Damone Clark, and company that are coming downhill. There was one point in practice on Thursday where Dan Quinn walked up 3 safeties into the box and still had another safety over the top. So different looks from Dan Quinn trying to confuse Dak Prescott. And, hey, iron sharpens iron, right? It's confusion in practice. That way when the game comes around, you're playing New York. That's different. That's different in week 1. But when we come back, let's talk a little bit about the guys behind the front seven. Leighton Vander Esch, Damone Clark, off to a great start. But is the linebacker group even the best group in practice so far here at training camp?
Inside Cowboys Training Camp, presented by Ford, is brought to you by AT&T, official sponsor of the Dallas Cowboys. Sleep Number, the official sleep and wellness partner of the Dallas Cowboys. And by your Texas Ford dealers. Ford is the best in Texas.
Cowboys!
This segment is brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors, official sporting goods retailer of the Dallas Cowboys.
He was a guy that always encouraged me when I was standing on the side, sad because I couldn't be out here practicing with the team. And when I got my chance last year, he was smiling from ear to ear, just happy for me to be out there. So Leighton's a guy that obviously he's one of a kind. Leighton he's better, he's more than just a football player. Leighton is a guy that really cares about you on and out the field.
Our sound, as always, brought to you by Sleep Numbers. We are now joined by Patrik "No C" Walker from DallasCowboys.com. And you've heard a lot about this defense, especially the front seven over the last few days and the way they've gotten after Dak Prescott. However, the guys on the backside of that defense have had some fun as well. Joe Wett Jr. had a lot to say about the young safety group.
Absolutely, he did. And in the absence of Donovan Wilson and Israel Mukuamu with injury, the onus is on these young guys, Marquise Bell, as well as Wanye Thomas, even Tyler Coyle, to step up and show they can make an impact to try to break onto the 53-man roster. Joe Wett Jr. had exceptional praise for Wanye Thomas, who, by my eyes alone, he's averaging 1 to 2 pass breakups per day. That's good news. And then Marquise Bell, he's operating all over the place in the down rows. So look for these young safeties to continue, hopefully, stacking good days.
How inviting is that for a safety group that's already down Donovan Wilson, Israel Mukuamu working his way back into the fold, but to have 2 young guys step up the way that they have?
It's major, especially when you have a 3-man rotation out there at safety. When you have some of those guys that are out, having these young guys be able to step into the fold is huge. You can talk about Wanye Thomas and his ability to have range sideline to sideline, and then Marquise Bell. Every man in the world is going to know how hard he hits when preseason shows up.
Let's talk about the guys in front of the safety group, though. That linebacker group, it looks thin on paper, but based off of the play that we've seen from guys like Leighton Vander Esch, Jabril Cox, and especially Damone Clark, it's been a fun camp for this linebacker group, and they look like they're playing free.
Most definitely. And Jabril Cox looks like he's taking the next step. But then you talk about him learning behind Damone Clark and learning behind Leighton Vander Esch primarily. Damone Clark spoke with him specifically on yesterday after padded practice. I asked him, hey, Damone, is the game slowing down for you now? He looked at me, smiled, and said, absolutely it is. Keep in mind, Damone Clark, this is a guy who was thrown into the fire, helped save the position in the absence of Anthony Barr last year, had no off-season of conditioning, but now is coming off of a complete offseason of conditioning, prep, and on-the-field training with Dan Quinn, Leighton Vander Esch, and those guys.
You really like Damone Clark. You've always been a fan of his, but what have you seen out here in Oxnard?
Running around, free range, no chicken. When you have the big fellas in front of you like you do, you talk about the Mozzie Smiths, you talk about the big Osas and all, and the Odighizuwas, those guys are going to allow for the second level to run around and flow. You think back to all the great defenses all across the NFL history. They usually have the big fellas up front to be able to hold down the fort. And when you have the guys that are going to prevent the offensive lineman from working up to that second level, you're going to have Vander Esch running around. You're going to have Damone Clark running around. Overshown and his speed is going to show up as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing these guys run around with that new front in front of them.
And I will also say this really quickly. Keep in mind there's chemistry between Damone Clark and Jabril Cox from their days at LSU. So that might also be helping both of them elevate their game.
Which position group do you think has had a better camp so far? I'm going to make things tough on you. That's a tough question. But safeties or linebackers?
I'm going to go with safeties right now simply because when you lose a guy like Donovan Wilson to injury, when you lose a guy like Israel Mukuamu who came on strong in the playoffs, particularly against Tampa Bay and Tom Brady, you feel like the safeties are going to take a step back as a unit. Marquise Bell and Wanye Thomas, they've stepped right in and they've started to make plays. The linebackers, I was expecting Leighton Vander Esch to look like Leighton Vander Esch, and he is. I was expecting Damone Clark to look like a year or two Damone Clark, and that's coming to fruition. I expected Jabril Cox to make the leap. Looks like he is. So for me, it's the safety unit that's impressing more.
And I'm going to go with the linebackers, no C. Just because these guys are meeting your expectations doesn't mean they're not taking care of business.
That is fair.
The second level is doing a great job, and for those same reasons I just gave previously. But those guys are showing you exactly why they're being entrusted by Dan Quinn. Those two, Damone Clark and Vander Esch, those guys are going to be a menace this year for sure.
Patrik "No C" Walker joining us here on Inside Cowboys Training Camp, driven by Ford. Thanks so much for taking some time. And we'll, of course, talk to him down the road. But when we come back, you've got a chance to be a fly on the wall for an entire Dallas Cowboys training camp practice. How can you tune in? And what's in store for Saturday here in Oxnard?
This segment was brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors, official sporting goods retailer of the Dallas Cowboys.
Go Cowboys!
Welcome back into Inside Cowboys Training Camp, driven by Ford, here from Oxnard, California. Alongside Isaiah Stanback, I'm Kyle Youmans. The Cowboys hit the practice field again on Saturday, and you've got a chance at home to watch the entire thing, starting at 1 p.m. Central Time, 11 a.m. on the Pacific Coast. And it's going to be a high-octane practice, as we've seen out here in training camp. But how can getting those extra reps help these guys moving into the preseason games?
It's absolutely everything. As you start approaching these preseason games, having these highly competitive practices are absolutely everything. And as a fan, it's awesome for you guys to be able to have an opportunity to check in and see exactly how it goes down here in Oxnard if you're unable to make the trip. But from our perspective as players, it's just another opportunity to go out there and get better. These guys are getting coaching. They've been in this system now for some time. OTAs, this is almost a third week of training camp here. So guys are starting to get their footing underneath them, and they're starting to being able to play fast, and they're going to be able to get their feedback from the coaches to be able to make sure that they're ready to play in this game next weekend.
This is also going to be a chance to see the starters, really, because Dak Prescott probably not going to play in those preseason games, but you'll see him out here on the practice field. Those preseason games are going to see a lot of starters rotate in, though, because this is a team that, especially with Mike McCarthy as the play caller, he's going to need the reps. He's going to need to have that connection with his guys. So you'll see it out here on the practice field, but you'll also see it starting on Saturday, August 12th, as the Cowboys take on the Jaguars at AT&T Stadium, 4 p.m. Central Time for that one. Isaiah will be in the booth for that one as well. For Isaiah Stanback and our entire Cowboys crew, I'm Kyle Youmans saying so long here from Oxnard.
Hey, did you peace sign him? I had to. I seen me coming up. I said, oh, yeah, I got him.
Inside Cowboys Training Camp, presented by Ford, was brought to you by AT&T, official sponsor of the Dallas Cowboys. Sleep Number, the official sleep and wellness partner of the Dallas Cowboys. And by your Texas Ford dealers. Ford is the best in Texas.